All right, Luke, we are live. We are live for episode number, it's number 16. Today's episode 16
Let's
of the
get
Luke
it.
and Brett show. Last week, we talked about all the tools and technology that we use, and what we found is that you and I use a lot of the same. Actually, I would say that even though we created the list independently, you and I use the exact same tools.
If it was a Venn diagram, it would basically be on top of one another.
On top of one another. And the one thing that we do agree on is everybody should have a CRM. We promote go high level. It does require a learning curve, and you have to understand how to set things up. But you turned me on to that. And we've been using this for what, 4 or 5 years? You 4 or 5 years. I think I'm into it maybe 3 or so.
It's I started looking back, and man, it's been probably 5 years now. I think maybe 4, deep 4, but
yeah, it has turned into the most robust. Have you ever noticed in their Facebook group how everybody just wants to whine and complain, and usually it's user error, but it is the most robust, usable tool that I know about on the market. Like I like it. They keep on developing things. So
100%.
today we're going to talk about the steps to generating high quality leads. I shared this with you before we got onto this, and it's something that I'm developing into a standalone course, more of a webinar, more of a kind of a keynote talk. And there's a section in there that I talk about the 5 steps to generating high quality listing leads. And I think this is kind of really important, simply because, as the saying goes, he or she who has the listings control the market. So I think we're going to talk about that. What do you think about that?
Let's get it.
Let's get it going.
I love the phrase, list to last, or it's you hear things like that often. So
the other thing, I was delivering this live yesterday for the very first time. I test things. It's not new content. Really what it is, it's just a bunch of Lego blocks. I take this and I put this in there, and it's really just organizing the flow and the story of it. And I was sharing the story about how I got into the business, and like many real estate professionals, you focus on buyers. I started in Salt Lake City, Utah. I now live in sunny Southern California. In Southern California, the average sales price, you can sell 4 or 5 homes a year and still make a 6-figure income. I had to close 50, 60 transactions a year just to do, a low of the same thing. Plus I was really young. So
right.
It took me a decade in the business to realize that somebody who's in their mid 40s, 50s, this young kid with spiky hair and a suit that didn't look like it fit him, was very challenging to convince them that I was the right person for the job. So, it's an evolution, but that's where the 5 steps kind of came in from. So step number 1, we'll just go and kind of go into there just because we're getting started a little bit late. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well. So step number 1, go into this one. Claim your primary market area. And a primary market area, what I put down is your geographic area. I can't get that. Is your geographic region that will produce the majority of your sales. One of the things that I find interesting within the real estate world, and this is something that's happened in the last 25 years. It wasn't always like this. But what technology has done is made real estate agents generalists. Nobody is a specialist in their local market area. And so one of the things I say, and language matters, is I put claim your market, meaning that if you're claiming an area, if you're sticking your flag and you're staking a claim, that means that every other real estate agent in the market, they're poaching. And
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, how can you? One of the top things that sellers are looking for, according to the National Association of Realtors, is they want somebody who knows the market.
Right.
how can you know Austin, Texas market or Irvine, California market if you have a real estate agent who specializes in real estate of planet Earth?
Right.
You can't. And it kind of goes back to a brick and mortar shop. You would never see a traditional business, local business, try to expand their service area so wide. Right? You know what? Fun fact. I live in the Great Park. You know that. There are about 10,000 homes in the Great Park. And in the last 12 months, there were 314 sales. Okay, last 12 months. If you had to guess, and I'm going to ask you to guess, how many do you think the very top listing agent, how many homes do you think he sold in Great Park?
The top listing agent in 314 homes. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, well, not necessarily a limb, but I'm going to go with 14 of those. So
14.
a very...
Okay, so 300, 10% would be 30. So you're thinking that they have 5% of the market, right?
Yeah.
6.5.
6.5.
That's the top. And it goes downhill from there. So there's a lot of onesie twosies. So
wow.
Here's my thought process. If there's 314 sales in a given year, and the very top person has less than 5% market share, I get all the mail. I see everything that's going on. There is not one clear person that is the area in my neighborhood specialist. But I would guess that with the median sales price probably about 1.8, 2 million, let's say 2 million just for math purposes. Yeah. I mean, how many homes do you need to sell each year to make sure that you're earning the living that you want? Chances are, what would happen if you focused on this and all you got was 10? Well, that's $20 million in sales volume. So the reason why I bring that up is that I think a lot of real estate agents think that they need to be everywhere all the time. They do everything everywhere all the time. They're very generalist. They spread themselves out. They'll drive 2 hours into Los Angeles during rush hour and drive 4 hours back because it's even worse. To try to get that single deal instead of just focusing right there in their backyard. Why do you think that is?
The riches are in the niches. Well, I think at first, probably my guess is like it's just a out of necessity more than anything else. Like you're coming up brand new, like you're old grasping for straws, right? You're just going after anything and everything that you can get a hand on, because that's all you have to go with, right? So you're willing to drive in traffic, ungodly distances and do all these things just to get a deal done. And sometimes those can be hard habits to break, right? Where you start off the way and then, it takes a while to get that comfortable level of knowing when to say no to certain things, right?
I can agree with that. Back when I first got into the business, when we didn't have the technology that we have, it wasn't that way. It wasn't that way. You couldn't really, you could, real estate licenses are valid in the entire state, but you wouldn't do it because you didn't know the area. But now, because of the MLS, because of the technology, the MLS is no longer a book. It allows people to expand their service area. And while what used to be just a neighborhood farm, you can expand to an entire city. I think what's happening though is that they went from that neighborhood farm specialty and they've expanded it to the entire planet, which to your point, riches in the niches, and what you're really doing is diluting the value of your service. Who was it? Alex Hermosi said that when you have a product or service and the consumer cannot see any distinguishable difference, one real estate agent look at the other real estate agent, the only difference is the color tie that they're wearing. The only way to increase value is by lowering the price. So you're on a race to zero. Interesting. So that's number one is to claim your market area. Usually I say start where you live. Do a 3 5 mile radius about that. Know everything about everything about everything about that, and start just being that person.
Your styrofoam cup method.
My styrofoam cup method. I did. I didn't use the styrofoam cup method because you can see um, that's too accurate. But that was step
That would
one.
be too. You just
That
got to
was
zoom the map in and then put it on.
then put it on there. All right, number two was identify your ideal client avatar. And I define this as the customer profile that is the best case scenario for the business. Now, I focus and we focus on just doing business. You know, a deal's a deal's a deal. But what'd you say? List to last, list to
Yeah.
last. Those who care, you know. So what's interesting about having a listing-based business is the activities that you promise the seller that you're going to do, that they hired you to, are the same activities that attract the buyers.
Right.
So if you're only focusing on buyers, you're still having to do the activities. You just don't have a listing. But when you have a listing, if you spend your time, effort, and resources in getting the listing, then you're getting really 2 for 1 because those same activities are going to market and generate buyer leads as well. So if you take 10 listings in a given calendar year, if you do things right, you'll get 10 more buyer leads, but you can't rely on the MLS to sell it. A lot of real estate agents, they rely too much on the MLS. They get the listing, they put in the MLS, they don't worry about any other marketing, they don't worry about any other prospecting, they're not using that property as bait. But going back to this, identifying your ideal client avatar, I help people get started. These are people who own a home and they live in your market area. And they want to sell it.
Yeah. I love that. I think this is kind of like expands on the number one where you're like claiming your area and you're like, okay, where I have my area now, I'm narrowing my focus even more and more and more. And a lot of times, um, especially when I'm connecting with people and they're new and they're trying to figure this out, like I'll go on like a series of like questions of like, well, what are you into? Like, what are your hobbies? What are your personal interests? Because a lot of times if you can marry your ideal client avatar with somebody who kind of fills in some of those buckets, you can really help. So it's like, hey, I'm my ideal client avatar is new home buyer, first time home buyer, right? Like that's my specialty. I'm honing in on that, whatever it may be. I mean, it could be people who are into cycling or whatever too. So
Well, and to that, so one thing you could say here is that they own a home, they live in the market area, they want to sell.
right,
So 2 out of those 3 you can get just through data. You don't need, if you get 2 out of the 3 just by contacting like your title or your escrow rep just to get the list, now your objective is finding out, sifting through that and prospecting and marketing to find out who wants to sell.
mm-hmm.
But in addition to that, it could be somebody who wants to own a home, somebody who wants to live in the market area, and somebody who wants to buy. So
Right.
it's the exact opposite of the same, it's the other side of the same coin. So, but the ideal client avatar is the same. Now you could go more specialized than that. You could only focus on maybe a coastal area. You could focus on, you and I talked about this. You used to have a Porsche. I used to have a Porsche. You could just focus on people who are Porsche enthusiasts.
Right.
And, my thought is people who own Porsches, they buy homes. Typically, they buy higher priced homes.
Right.
There's this real estate agent that's in Long Beach. Before she got in real estate, she was a wine wholesaler. She is a connoisseur when it comes to wine and pairing. And I don't know if she does it now, but years ago I suggested that she needs to do like a wine blog and such and really just focus on that. And because it ties into real estate. When people get to know her, like her, and trust her, I asked her, do wine people buy homes? Do people interested in wine buy homes? And she looked at me, she was like, yeah. I'm like, well, then why don't you just talk about wine and let people know that you do real estate and you're going to attract, what is that?
Yeah.
People people of a feather
Vibe attracts
flock
your tribe.
together.
I simplified that your vibe attracts your tribe, right? So
Your
it's like,
vibe, I'm writing that one down too. Vibe attracts tribe. Don't
and
worry,
that's
when I use these, I'm going to
gosh,
call these
talk
are a
about it.
Lukeism. I
Talk
got
about
Brett-isms. That was a
network.
Lukeism. Okay, let's go into step number 3. Step number 3, create deliverable assets. This is something that you and I do. The main focus is to generate a lead. I think real estate agents they rely way too much thinking that they're going to be able to sell a cold client right into listing or buying a property. Doesn't happen that way. The focus is just getting their information, and the best way to do that is by creating a free report. Now, I put this together simply as an example, but a free report, how to sell your Irvine home, Austin home, coastal home, fast and for top dollar, even in a high interest rate and declining market. The nice thing about this report is that it's bait. You're not going to get this if I say that how to sell your Irvine home fast and for top dollar, you're not going to get people who are in Beverly Hills, because it's really focused on that. And so the key here is just to have a bunch of just deliverable assets, unique content that you can trade for their contact information.
Yeah. Yeah, that is it's super important to have a reason for people to give you their contact information, especially because here the big thing is the sales cycle typically is so long for real estate, to be. So when somebody connects with you, however they connect with you, wherever they connect with you at, like having a place for them to go to be able to stay in touch or get that, for you to be able to follow up and reach them. Because so many people are willing to put in an email, right? They might not want to buy now, but they're like, hey, I kind of like this guy. I like his vibe. I like the cut of his jib. Like, I'm going to give him my email now so I can be marketed to, because I want him to, I want to get into his realm. I'm not ready now, but in 6, 9 months, 12 months, when I am ready, hopefully, and then that's where it kind of leads us into the next step. But having some place for them to go to give you their contact information. And it doesn't just have to be like one report. You can have half a dozen type of things.
How to buy a home
guys,
in
seller guides,
XYZ.
tips, home inspections, like all these different things. And it could be as simple as just a recorded video of yourself. Hey guys, thanks for, jumping onto my thing. Here's, my top 5 tips of whatever it is. So,
and that ties in well with what we talked about last week on the different tools you use, because what we're really talking, look, you can't operate at a high efficiency in 2022 going into 2023. You can't operate at a high level without having a technology platform. It can't just be a CRM anymore. It can't. You could do that with Outlook. You need to actually have the ability to create these landing pages, to collect this data, to have autoresponders, to send text messages, to send emails, to track metrics. Like, there's all kinds of things that you need to do. I want to pull up this slide that I wanted to share with you. When I do this live, it's a much longer presentation. It kind of walks people through the journey, and I go through some Q&A. This is one of the questions I talk about with the sellers, and this is from the NAR 2020 Profile Homebuyer and Sellers, and it talks about what percentage of sellers contacted only one agent before they listed. Do you want to guess? 31, 48, 82?
82.
Boom, you're right. 82%. So here's what we know about consumer behavior, is that there's a point in time when somebody's willing to sit down and speak to a salesperson. But then there's a point in time, that could be days, weeks, or years, when they're going to start thinking about moving, thinking about buying, thinking about selling. And according to Google, You know, that small little company that has about 95% of the world's search traffic, according to them, 88% of all consumers, the very first step when a stimulus enters in, when they have that thought,
Mhm.
about buying a house or selling a house, the very first step they do is they go into research mode. They go into discovery mode. They start searching things. So as you and I start talking about this, you need to have that platform, the stuff that we talked about in the last video. If you didn't catch that, make sure that you guys go back and watch the last video. But um, you need to be able to generate those leads from there. And it's not about selling them right away. It's about getting those leads. Someone's calling me from Poland. That's not a spam. That's not a spammer.
That's interesting.
But you need
That
to
even
have that, right? So those are the things that I wanted to share on that. Let me go back to where I was at now. So that's number 3. That was create your deliverable assets. Free report, free training, free video, free walkthrough. Tie it into what they want. See, this report, a buyer wouldn't download this report. But a buyer who wants to buy a home in Irvine fast and whatever, they're not going to want to pay top dollar, even in a high interest rate environment. They would download something like that.
Yeah, simple like link tree with like a handful of deliverables is perfect.
Well, that's a good idea. Just create one website where people can just opt into
Yeah,
and download them
they
all.
I put together one for our clients. It's like a version of a link tree inside our high level where it is we're attaching all the guides that you need. I mean, just they're basic. You can modify them
So
and
do you
update.
have them opt in once? Because you only need to get their contact information
You only need to
once.
get them once, but like having, I mean,
And then
if
it's
you
just
have
a
just
page.
one central thing where they go to, and it's going to say, hey, buyer guide,
Download
seller
this, download
guide,
that.
you know,
I like that. I'm going to do
um,
that.
it's it makes it easy because you can connect with whomever, wherever, buyer side, seller side. Um, we're working on right now with a couple people to create like a first time homebuyer course too. So that could be like another just lead magnet download or something to think about when they get into that space. So
It blows my mind that people aren't utilizing this anymore. I went to a function, a neighborhood function last weekend, and there were 3 realtors there promoting it in tents. I knew 2 of them. I didn't know the other one. But the one that I didn't know, I went up there and they want you to fill out information on your tickets or whatnot. And you and I have talked about the QR code technology, how we've always said that we never understood it prior to 2020. We're like, that's a dead technology. Why are people using that? And then, hi. And then now we have, now it's used. Now people, I mean, the pandemic brought life back to it.
right,
But I put bogus information because I know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to put me on their spam list. I'm going to get the stuff I don't want. I just wanted to put my name in for a drawing.
right.
So it behooves me why people don't have a QR code there, like open houses. Come
Hmm.
in, take a look around. You have to check in. Here's your QR code. Check in. Everybody knows how to do it, and you have to email them the confirmation so and they can show that to them because you want to make sure you have the correct information. I don't understand why people don't do that.
Right.
But that's for another probably video. Maybe we'll talk about that number again. So step number 4, create and deploy content. So this is something I shared with you about. Often you probably have done this. I do this often. Is I sit down. I'm like, man, I don't have anything. What am I going to write about? I don't have anything to write about. There's nothing going on. So I came up with this little circle, and the first thing is you got to, supporting content. If you're going to start, you've claimed your area, you've honed
Hmm.
in on who your ideal client avatar is, you have your deliverable, and now what you need to do is you need to start creating more content to build authority. So you start with supporting information. That's information that's general in your area. So that would be schools, elementary, junior high, high school, Montessori, so private schools, public schools, all that
Yeah.
stuff. Grocery stores. When I moved here, the big grocery stores here is called Ralph's. You know what the heck Ralph's was? What is it in Austin? What's the big store?
HEB.
What?
HEB.
Yeah,
It's a
man. See, I
Texas
wouldn't know
thing.
that. I
It's
wouldn't
a
know that.
Texas thing. You will if you ever come, or if you moved here.
Yeah, you
There's
would.
no other choice.
Yeah, I remember I didn't know what Trader Joe's was because moving in Salt Lake, they didn't have a Trader Joe's there.
Right.
I knew Whole Foods, so I'd go to Whole Foods, but there's a lot of things that are within the neighborhood that people look for, and by you creating that content is going to position you as the authority, and that ties into the next level, which is the neighborhood. Neighborhood, as you know, Irvine is a master plan community made up of nothing but master plan communities. So it's very easy here for me to just kind of pick and choose areas. Where it goes into probably in Austin is that you don't have those master plan communities that have, really nice, fine transition edges. So it's gonna rely on, for example, I was up in Los Angeles. Los Angeles, you could be, on this side of the street versus on that side of the street could be totally different.
Right.
And there's a not a non-official boundary. So the neighborhood, you're going to talk about that, but then now you get to pull in the supporting content because the schools are the same. So I encourage people to have at least four neighborhoods that they can talk about because you have 4 weeks in a month. So each week you can do a market update on each one of those neighborhoods. They should tie together.
Right.
But you could do that. And then we go into the highest level, which is property. Once you've built out that supporting content, now you can just go into properties. Great thing about properties is that new properties go on the market quite often. I'd like to say daily, depending on when you're watching this video. Who knows what the market in the future holds for us, but I know that new properties come up in most markets each and every week. So it gives you content to go in, talk about it. You're already the expert on the neighborhood. You're already the expert on the area. Now you just tie everything together into those videos.
Yeah, that's people. This is the number one thing that people want. Period. Right. That's the only thing that they're interested in is properties, and it's why you see sites like Zillow. They're so big. It's just that's where people go. When they're interested, they want to look at homes. Period. Like the agent is a secondary thought to the process. So highlighting homes, highlighting in the neighborhood, things like that, like going down these different layers. Plus, it's an endless supply of ongoing relative content. You can jump in. I love some of the most high performing videos that you see on like Reels and TikToks and YouTube. It's like what you get in this neighborhood for this price point. Right? Those videos are just always perform. And they don't have to be highly produced either. I think they work significantly better when they're more normal, natural, and not like highly polished ones too. So
no, absolutely. So let's go to number 5, and then I'm getting harassed on my next meeting. So let's go ahead and finish number 5. Let's go back to there. So the last that is we've gone through 1 through 4. So we've claimed our market area. We've identified our client avatar, ideal client avatar. We're building out these deliverable assets that we call lead magnets that you're going to trade people for their information. And then we went to what other kind of content then you can create. Now we need to nurture them. This is where the money is, because this is how you're going to stay top of mind. As you create more content, you put it into a blog or a vlog, a video blog, and you email them weekly. These are people who opted in. I encourage people to have a monthly physical newsletter that you send out to people. That's going to be a higher level. That's going to be a past client sphere of influence. These are people who opted in that you have addresses to. That's how you stay top of mind. And then depending on the quality, the type of lead and what it is, you're going to call them. Definitely your past clients, definitely your sphere of influence. you should at least make a quarterly call. Now, quarterly calls I don't think are as important as they once used to be, just because there's all these different platforms that can keep you top of mind.
Right.
The goal here for the quarterly call is to stay top of mind. And of course, ask for referral business. But if you're calling someone every 3 months just asking for business, chances are they're going to stop taking your calls.
Right.
So the other way to do that is just to stay. Yeah. So that's the 5 things. Those are the 5 things of the training program that I put together that I delivered.
I love it. The fortune's in the follow up, right? And with today's there's some of the things that we add or suggest on that is, we obviously retargeting online for nurturing is just an absolute game changer. And then getting physical and having events, the quarterly calls, having some sort of event where people can go to physically is an awesome way of staying connected and nurturing your opportunities too. Taking it
I'll tell you what,
offline.
man, if I was back in production, I would be focusing on the neighborhood that I live in. I would have two events a year. They would all have these massive bouncy houses on it, and everybody would have to RSVP to come. So
Love it.
That is just the ultimate way to be. Not these small little things, come get a hot dog or an ice cream cone, just like a massive event. So you'd be into it a few $1,000, but man, being
Right.
that connected with all the people that live in that neighborhood, I think
Totally.
it'd be well worth the ad spend.
Love it.
All right, that's all I got that's all we have. So
Let's get it.
that was episode, I think, what did we say, 16?
I think so.
Tune in with us next week. I'll catch you later, Luke.
Awesome.